the very things that frustrate you most in life, the things that make you smile the most in life, the things that bring you the greatest joy or even break your heart, those are breadcrumbs or little symbols that align with who you are and who you're created to be.
You're listening to Guards Down. This is Greg Washington.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Guards Down. I have with me a very special guest and a dear friend to my heart, Mary Tobin. Mary, how are you?
I'm outstanding. How are you?
I'm doing well. Blessed to see another day. I can't complain whatsoever.
I know that's right.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, you know the show is about how different cultures deal with trauma and grief. And
right.
The whole goal is to help someone get some tools to put in their toolkit so they can live to fight another day. So I want to jump into it. Tell us about yourself, your background, just lay it all out.
Right.
Let me give the floor to you.
Absolutely. I am Mary Tobin from the undisputed King of Cities, ATL, Georgia. I am Atlanta through and through to the core, all things lemon pepper wings, Atlanta Falcons, and sweet tea. I am a proud graduate of Benjamin Mays High School, which has produced an incredible number of West Point grads. So it was probably in my destiny to also attend West Point. I am a proud member of the class of 2003 Protectors of the Free, and I immediately left West Point almost 6 months to the day and deployed to Iraq. And I would spend about 10 years in the Army with 2 combat deployments to Iraq. And after about 10 years, I was medically retired, got injured my first deployment. Nothing too serious at the time. I'm all limbs and all my faculties still in place. But, there were just some things that I couldn't overcome with the injuries. And so left the military, dived into a career in the federal government, and then the nonprofit bug hit me. So I have been an executive director or working in some sort of executive leadership space in the nonprofit industry here for at least the last 6 solid years, sprinkling a little city government in between, and in my not so spare time, either leading nonprofits or founding nonprofits. And so you could say my whole life I've spent as a public servant. And I think I get that from my mom. Grew up super poor initially. But there was never a day that went by that my mom didn't set aside an additional plate for family members who might have been, impacted by addiction and poverty themselves. So I grew up just in this space of gratitude and paying it forward and serving others, even when you only had a little. So it makes sense that this is my path. And so this is me, public servant, lover of all things Atlanta, and very proud to be here with you today.
Indeed. And, I will say that everything you just spoke on is very true, being a public servant. I remember when I was a freshman or plebe at West Point, and, y'all took us under your wing and just looked out for us, showed us the ropes, made sure we was good, showed tough love when we needed it to make sure academics was on point. So
Indeed. Yes.
Indeed. And so for you to go 10 years in the military, 2 deployments, getting hurt on your first one and still battling through to maintain, you have this sense of purpose about you. And so, that's one thing that I definitely appreciate, what you bring to the table, whoever you meet.
Oh, thank you.
Talk about your mom. And this is my first time getting the chance to, kind of hear your background and your story. And so I strongly believe that trauma and grief shapes your life.
Yeah.
Shapes your why as to the person that you become or want to become, shapes how you endure the things you go through, and shapes your transition into the different roles that you grow into in life.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, I always like to start off talking about childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, did your parents or role models or anyone around you outside the Atlanta Falcons, teach you how to deal with trauma and grief?
Short answer, no. I often, if you ever hear me speak about my early childhood, I would say, up until I was 11 or 12 years old. And that's a point on the calendar for me, because when I was 12, my mother married my stepfather, Deacon Clarence Hicks. And I mentioned that because that was a real turning point in my family dynamic, my values and my principles. Prior to then, very, very honestly, my childhood was just marred by dysfunction. Everything from, criminal activity to divorce to poverty, moving from public housing development to public housing development, watching my mother work 2 and 3 jobs to take care of myself and my younger brother, not knowing if food was going to be on the table, let alone Christmas gifts or birthday presents, right? So I grew up in an environment of survival and struggle. And so in my mind, that's how life was. It was a struggle. You had to fight for everything that you got or everything that you wanted. And I think one of the beautiful things that my mom, and perhaps this does answer your question in a way, my mother, I don't think she knew it. I think she's an educator, PhD, you name it. And so she always believed in the power of education, but also books and reading. So my mother would go to the library and get, the books that they were giving away for free. She would get those books and she would bring them home. My mother also spent the last of her check, I remember this one particular month, on a set of encyclopedias, right? So this is showing my age, right? Those crimson books with the gold binding. A traveling salesman came to our house one day. I watched my mother decide to spend her bus pass money on those encyclopedias every month. And so what would happen is, no matter what was happening around me, I would open a book and I would get lost in the pages. So even though I'm hearing sirens, I'm hearing helicopters buzzing overhead, cops may or may not be coming to my house that day looking for whomever, nothing could take away what I was reading in the book. So if I got cops busted in my door, I still am reading about Paris. I'm still dreaming about becoming an archaeologist and going to Egypt, right? I'm still learning about Harriet Tubman. So I think that's how I learned to cope, because there was clearly a world outside of the world that I was experiencing. And so I think that gave me hope. I will say, I did my family, on all sides, right? They believed that therapy was for white folks, right? And that's what you were taught. No, that's white folk stuff. And talking about your problems and the issues, we did not do that. We did not talk openly about the issues that we were having in the family. So you could be having a whole feud with your auntie, but y'all at the Thanksgiving table laughing it up, right? And so definitely did not develop healthy or healing coping mechanisms, which, for me would show up a little later, I think, in my friendships and relationships. Because as bold as people think I am, as, not shy as people think I am, when I have a problem with my family and friends, it is very hard for me to bring that up, so I will suffer because I don't want to make my family and friends uncomfortable, even with the truth. And even if I'm hurting because of their behaviors or actions.
I got you. So when you talk about, bringing up the truth because you're in a sense wanting to save face with family, yeah. You bring up a whole number of topics. And so I want to go back to your world that you were living in versus the world that you were reading about.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, one of the big things with this whole project that I'm doing is learning how different cultures view, treat, and deal with trauma and grief. Right. And so, with what you just said, do you feel like different cultures cope differently?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I think, especially with the Black culture, there are kind of levels of trauma that are acceptable to speak about and or act out about, right? So if your family causes you trauma. Black folks, it's like this unwritten rule, right? We're not dealing with that. We're not doing anything that would seemingly cause division or break in that family dynamic. But let somebody from outside of the house attack a family member or hurt you. Now the whole family is like coming together to wreak havoc, which is very interesting because oftentimes you see, at least in my family, I found us coming together to confront or attack someone else for something that was actually not as bad as what a family member did. And so there's this, I think a lot of that has to do with oppression, racism, the trauma from like the society at large, not really valuing Black faces and spaces, right? So it's like, you know what? We all we got. Even if we are terrible to each other, we don't break this up because what we got to face outside of this house is worse than what we're dealing with. So I think, so then that's what happens, right? If it ain't white people with racism and oppression coming against us, then you need to find a way to suck that up, man. Get over that, right? And even with Black women in the family dynamic, being strong is a badge of honor, right? We're like, look how strong she is. Look how resilient she is. She just, she got hit and all these bad things happened to her and her family, and she keeps on going. She still got her degree. She still raised her kids. She still, got that great job. But she's not healing at all. And we literally hold up on a pedestal the strong Black woman, not even considering whether or not we've created space for her to heal and to deal with all the hurt that she's experienced. And I, conversely, I didn't really learn that going to therapy as a kid was a thing until I went to West Point, and I had white roommates. And they were like just casually talking about, when I talked to my therapist, like, what? So now I got to get over my biases because I'm thinking, oh, my roommate crazy? No, my roommate has actually been taught a mechanism to heal and cope. But as a Black person, I'm thinking, oh, only crazy people, quote unquote, go to therapists and get help.
Yeah. No, I like how you put that because, as you were talking about your family and, the struggles you went through, when it was inside the family dynamics, it was something that was overlooked.
Yeah.
But on the outside, when someone was attacking the family, it was a band together to get that done. And so when you look at the dynamics of just us as people, African Americans, you think about the generational trauma that we go through. And so, I was talking with my son, the other day, and we were talking about the different modes that we had to be in life. So I was telling him, me and my dad never really said I love you until later on in life. Because when you look at it, his father and his father before him, they were dealing with slavery, with Jim Crow, everything, for survival. Yeah. They didn't have time to say, oh, I love you. It was, hey, look, this is what you're going to be faced with in the world. And so you need to learn to be strong. Yeah. Right. And not let people, break up the family. So I definitely understand where you come from for there. Man, there's just so many different avenues to go down with this.
Now, I like what you were just saying. It's almost as if, in that strength, we were afraid to be weak. Like it's almost as if we treated or we treat each other, especially those in the Black culture who face so many other, societal issues. Like, hey, if you go down this path of confronting your hurt and your trauma and your insecurities, you're going to break. Like, and you won't be able to come back together. You can't put the pieces back together. Like we have somehow taught each other that, like, don't go too far because if you cry or if you realize that thing that happened to you when you were a small kid, you're not over that. And that has impacted every relationship you've been in or how you think about yourself. Like if you do that, you're not going to be able to recover. It's almost like you get to the edge and you don't want to jump for fear that you can't come back. And And I will admit, you know, even as I have gone through my journey of therapy, in therapy, and that's, you know, touch and go, it took me some time to like get to that point. There's moments in like those initial sessions where I feel like, man, this woman is pushing me to the edge. And I'm going to say something or reveal something, and I'm not going to be able to come back from it. And sure enough, I do. But because we don't have a culture where we're even trying, right? We're not even like leaning into that. It's the unknown. And so that fear of the unknown kind of creates this narrative where, nah, young Black man, don't do that. Don't cry. Don't admit when you're hurt. Don't go see a therapist. Young Black woman, you're strong. You've already survived. Like, why you got to go back in the past and look at that stuff? No, you're good. And so we just really, I think it's this fear of being broken, not understanding that like that's the beginning of healing. And the only reason I'm able to say this is because I've had just amazing therapists who have said, I promise you, if you go on this journey with me, you're going to come out better on the other side, you know. But I will also admit that my progress in that healing, you know, journey has been with therapists who look like me or who have similar experiences, right? So a Black woman, veteran, someone who can relate to that, right? So I will admit that that's been an advantage for me, even in my healing process.
Yeah. So let's talk about your journey. So why go to West Point?
To make my community proud. I didn't even want to go to West Point. I wanted to go to Spelman. I'd spent my whole life trying to become a Spelman woman, period. I had my whole everything mapped out. I was going to go to Spelman. I was going to go to grad school at Georgia Tech. It was going to be a whole thing. I was going to be a biochemist. I knew what I wanted to be. And when I was in high school, I was in this college prep track at my high school, and they would take a portion of the entire sophomore class and throw them into JROTC, like regardless of college prep or vocational track. And what would happen is, you know, you could take this waiver home to your parents and they could sign it. Get my kid out of there. I don't want to go there. But then you would start to notice like the demographic of most of the kids in JROTC were like the kids that I think teachers had identified. They've been having some troubles in some areas, mainly disciplinary, right? And once I got into JROTC, you know, I come skipping home one day with the waiver. Here, parents, sign a waiver so I can go back to regular school. And that day I found out that my stepfather is a Korean War veteran. I didn't know that. And he turns to my mother and says, no, we're gonna keep her in there. It'll be good for you, baby girl. I'm like, what? Like, my mother starts crying. She's like, I don't want my daughter to go to war. Like, I mean, they've just my mom is fast forwarded to, you know, be in combat. And it's so funny. I took to JROTC like a fish in water. It was like, wait, all I gotta do is like wear my uniform a certain way, follow these rules, and I get to tell people what to do? Yes, this is it. And my senior Army instructor, Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas J. Burke, retired. This white guy, blue eyes, stony blue eyes, ashen white hair, just as hard as nails. A Ranger, was battlefield promoted in Vietnam. I mean, guy's just hard. He had retired, long since retired from the military, and had made a commitment to work in inner city schools, to work in predominantly Black schools, and expose young Black high school students to the opportunities in the military, and worst case scenario, help you build up your high school resume so that you can get into any school that you want to go into. And his story was every great leader that he ever met in the Army was Black, and they were enlisted, and he felt like they would have been 4-star generals had they had the opportunity to go to West Point or to go to OCS. So I watched this man invest so much time, so many hours, money, heart, passion, and soul into us. And he told me one day, you know, Tobin, if you make a 4-year commitment to West Point, you'll never have to make another investment in your life. Your life will be set. It's pretty right? But the way he prepped me, I mean, made me run 5 miles every morning, had to read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and report out to him every single morning. I mean, I got rank and I eventually became the battalion commander of my unit there at high school. But like by the time I became a senior in high school and West Point was an option, I knew that I truly wanted to be a leader, like that I'm a leader at heart, and that my greatest passion is to develop the greatest potential in others and to watch them change the world. And I was like, well, if that's who I am, then I'm going to go to the premier leadership institution in the world. So I took a chance on West Point. I said, hey, worst case scenario, I could leave in my sophomore year and go back to Spelman the way I planned to. But once I got to West Point, the bug bit me, and I said, okay, this is what it's all about.
Yeah. Ma'am, so it sounds like your stepfather was very influential in your life and decision making. And I just want to pause for a second and just tip my hat off to all of those men out there stepping up.
Absolutely. To
be dad to, their families, even though it may not be blood. That title of being a father and a dad is an awesome responsibility. And it doesn't mean that, you have to be blood in order to step into that role and do that. And so, hats off to your stepdad.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for even asking about him. I don't get the opportunity to talk about him that often. But, and it's interesting because, again, he married my mother when I was 12. I was turning 13. So I only had 4 years in the household with him before I went to college. And, high school, you hate your parents. So, it was like kind of in passing, lay down the law, make sure I go to church, make sure I get good grades and I'm not out here wilding. And that's kind of it. But, I spoke briefly about the dysfunction that I grew up prior to that marriage. I did not know what a good husband, a good father, stability, respect for my mother looked like. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know how a man was supposed to talk to a wife and his children. I didn't know any of that. All I knew was what I was growing up with. And so to then see this man build this household with my mother and my younger brother, in which is full of love and caring and respect, that when they argued, you could barely hear it because they were in the room, and he spoke in a very calm demeanor and voice. And when that door opened back up, it was all love. To hear laughter and joy, to hear I love you being said, and I'm proud of you, baby girl. I needed to hear and to see that before I went off into the world, so that I knew that there was another way, and what I'd grown up in wasn't the model, and that there could be better. And so I'm forever grateful to him for showing me that, because despite, mistakes and experiences that I've had even as an adult, I have a model for a good father and a good man and a good husband like that resides with me.
Indeed. Makes me want to call my dad.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely going to have a phone call after this and be like, "Hey, pops."
Indeed, I just saw my dad early this morning, so it's ringing with me. He just, the last thing he said to me before I walked out the house was, "I'm proud of you, baby girl. I'm so proud of you." So it just rings in my head. Yeah.
Indeed. Okay, so tell us about your military experience. When it comes to dealing with trauma and grief, both directly and indirectly, because it's obviously you're a passionate leader about your soldiers and about, having a purposeful life. So, speak to that aspect of it.
Right. Like I said earlier, I was 6 months removed from West Point, almost to the day. And I was in Baghdad, Iraq. I was the only female and the only Black officer who deployed in that particular unit with a field artillery unit. And once we got in country, our mission changed from, higher headquarters to now we were doing, convoy escorts and supplementing a lot of the MP, military police, and the infantry soldiers' missions, especially around the Green Zone and the Baghdad International Airport. And so, I went from, okay, I just need to be a good signal officer and make sure everybody can communicate to I'm prepping my soldiers for these missions. I'm sometimes going out on these missions with my guys. And, what I immediately noticed is, this heightened level of anxiety always, right? So I was there during Operation Iraqi Freedom 2. So that was right after we captured Saddam Hussein. He was still alive, still on the base adjacent to where I lived. And so we got attacked incessantly. Every single day we were getting attacked. And I think it was two incidences that I think probably ring with me more often than not when we talk about trauma and post-traumatic stress. One particular day, I was not going out on mission with my platoon, but, I always prepared them to go out. They were literally going out of the gate of the forward operating base. And you could hear the boom, and I would monitor the radios to make sure my guys hit their checkpoints. It's like, boom. And then, I hear my guys yelling, but I knew that they hadn't really made it out the gate. So, I'm freaking out. Me and a couple of other soldiers, we hop in a truck and go out towards the gate. A rocket has literally hit one of the makeshift huts that in Iraq, local Iraqi women were selling things out of to the soldiers. So they were inside of our fob and it hit. So my guys, they weren't hurt, but they were trying to provide medical assistance to the women. One woman watched her burn alive. Another woman, my team, they, wound up carrying her to, a medical building. And by the time they came into the TOC, my God, you could tell they were in shock. They had blood, kind of graphic, just, human skin still on their uniforms. And I watched my platoon, these guys come in, literally put their weapons in the weapons rack and then sit back down at their desk and they're working. And I'm looking at them and they got blood on their uniforms. And I'm looking at them like, this can't be right. So I do what I think I know to do. And I call up the mental health professionals there on base. And I say, hey, I got a platoon of guys who just encountered this. They seem to be okay. I said, but they're literally sitting in our TOC and their blood, they're covered in blood and human remains. And so, she taught me, the mental health professional taught me through a couple of options, things to look for, and, got off the phone. So I felt empowered. One of my senior NCOs confronts me outside and goes, did you call the crazy doctor on my guys? What are you doing calling a psychologist? They'll be all right. My men will be okay. You don't do, he's like accosting me because I made a phone call. Now, of course, I had to step into my officership and say, hold on, you're going to go to parade rest while you're talking to me. One. And two, these are my soldiers. And three, I was finding out what resources were available. And then I brought it all down and said, hey, you're not even okay. I've never seen you look like this before. So what I need you to do is take all the guys who just experienced this, give them the rest of the day off. Y'all do whatever y'all got to do. Make sure that they change their uniforms. Throw it away if you need to. Don't let them keep it or try to wash it out. And over the next 2 weeks, I would see my men just going through these stages of grief and how they dealt with it. And even then, I carry some of that with me because I'm not sure I handled it the right way. But I made myself available to them to kind of talk. So it was a lot of late night cigar sessions just on my steps in my trailer, just talking to my guys. And a couple of them wound up not really being able to kind of deal with some of that. And they wound up leaving country. And so that's just kind of one, when you're not actually directly in the trauma, but you're indirectly impacted by it and you're worried, wondering what do you do? And I think the second, incident that I always think about largely is the one in which, I don't know if awarded or I was given the combat action badge for, a 155 mortar. It was unexploded. It didn't implode, but it hit my trailer, the side of my trailer. So it kind of smashed it like a sardine can, like the sides of it was open. And I was actually in my trailer, sleep when that happened. And, boom, and I immediately roll under my bed. I got my Kevlar on and it was just breathing. I'm like, okay, got all my body parts. I'm okay. And, I come out of the trailer and I could see where it hit. And, the ordnance team removed the mortar, but it left the crater unfilled for 2 weeks. So every day that I walked home, I had to walk around this crater to get into my trailer. Greg, that messed me up. That messed me up more than seeing my soldiers like covered in blood. Because for them, they came to work the next day, they had on clean uniform. So unless you talked to them or you thought about the incident, it wasn't in your face. The fact that I could have died was in my face, in the one place that I was supposed to have solace and peace every day. And that's when my sleep patterns started getting messed up. That's when I noticed my anxiety was crazy. I was just nervous all the time. I would work 18, 20. Sometimes I would work 2 days straight and my boss would have to tell me, hey, LT, I need you to go home. Like, go get some sleep. And that's when I knew. I was like, okay, Mary, sooner or later, you're going to have to deal with this. And the only way I wound up finishing out that deployment sleeping, I had to get a sleep aid, from the health clinic.
Yeah. Man, so first, let me say I really appreciate you opening up and sharing that because, I wasn't expecting all of this, out the gate. And so having that intestinal fortitude or that courage, right, to make a call to see what resources was at your fingertips to help your guys, and then to allow your senior NCO to, come to you and talk.
Yeah. Understand
that he was going through some stress himself.
Yeah.
And then pull everything together. That shows a very true sign of some great leadership right there. And I would honestly say even to this day, they probably thank you, even if they don't know what you did for them. So that's just awesome in itself right there. Let's talk about the collateral damage of what you've seen, witnessed your soldiers go through, as well as, what you went through. So you already started to touch on it in the sense of you were every day having to see how close you were to dying, right? And then you were having to witness your soldiers try to process their own grief.
Yeah.
Right. And so what effect did that have on you witnessing that and the people around y'all?
Yeah, you know what? None of us, I'll say in country, none of us dealt with it the right way. And when I say right way, I mean, I think the best way we knew how to deal with it would be to grab a cigar or a cigarette and sit on a stoop and grab a can of near beer and, BS after work, 10, 11, 12 at night and slowly get around to, yeah, man, that was crazy what happened, huh? Yeah. We still here. So another day, another mission, right? And that's how we it was almost as if we were gauging who's going to break and say, this war's not normal and I'm actually not okay. And none of us ever really broke because we felt like you never knew what the next day was going to bring. Again, I'm afraid of being weak because I don't know if I'm going to be able to come back from that. I mean, I remember there was a soldier, a brilliant guy. I mean, just intelligence guy. And, some stuff at home happened, family stuff coupled with all the attacks that we were that were happening with us in our FOB, in our forward operating base, and then off on mission. And the guy, he broke. So much so that we had to confiscate his weapon, his ammunition, and we had to have someone looking after him or on guard for him 24 hours a day. And this is a guy that, easygoing, loving, kind. He was like a heart and soul of our little ragtag group of men and women, and me. And he broke. And I think for some of us, we took that as a sign of, nope, not here, not going to do that here. Nope, absolutely. If I'm going to break, I'm going to break at home. And I know that's how I processed it too. Also, because there's the element of I'm the only woman officer, I'm the only Black officer, in the unit. I can't show weakness. I can't, and I so there was this kind of added pressure for me, like, no, girl, if you're going to deal with this when you get back home, but you can't do that because there was a turning point in my time there where it wasn't just the Black female lieutenant. It's like, no, this is our LT, this is our officer, and this is the one we can come to. So I couldn't even really process. I went to church a lot, I went to Sunday service. I was in the choir. I think that's how I got like my break from that. But even then, in church, we didn't really deal with the fact that we are having church in war, like in a war zone. Like we could look outside the windows of the church and see where Saddam Hussein was being held, right? So like I think in war, you kind of got to create this like bubble, this insulated bubble. Like you can't let too much disturb it, or else you don't know what's going to happen with you mentally, spiritually, or physically if you start to confront the fact that you are, every day, you don't know if you could die. You don't know if you could come back permanently disabled or disfigured or maimed, right? And kind of seeing that every single day, like watching the casualties roll down this screen and searching for names of your friends, like that stuff gets to you. And so you I started to think, man, not only is life fragile, but all we have is this uniform, this time, that's all we got. And I think slowly I stopped planning for the future. And I think that's how I coped.
Man, you hit a couple of things. Stop planning for the future is a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
So I struggled with my TBI and also with some of my experiences. Mm-hmm. And so you said something that triggered a memory that I had suppressed and forgot about. And so when you spoke about church, because we're at war, we're trying to bring some normalcy to our life. Right. So the cigar sessions, the BS with the guys, just to feel normal, going to church, singing in the choir, listening to the word, just to, kind of get a spiritual balance so that your everyday task, mission, condition, and standards is not just focused on the fight.
Yeah.
And I remember not going to church one day because I had a lot of work to do and the church got mortared. Hit with mortars. And so I forgot all about that until you said something.
Yeah.
And it's just sitting here and it's like, man, like you said, you stop planning for the future because it's so many different things going on around. You don't know when your time is up. All you do know is I got this mission. And when I get back, I got the next mission.
That's right. Yeah.
Let's re-up. Let's go. And so you stay in that mindset to keep you sane, right. In a sense. Mm-hmm. And you were speaking earlier about being the only and the first Black lieutenant, or officer, in your unit. And of course, it made me think about Emily Perez.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you would please share your experience with her and also tell us where you was at when you found the news about her.
Yeah, so this is where you're trying to make me cry.
I'm not, I mean.
Yeah, it's, and I never know when I'll get emotional and talk about it. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes I'm not. I think I got a couple earliest memories of me and Emily. Fun fact, me and Emily used to bump heads a whole lot. And people used to say we bumped heads because we're like the same darn person.
Correct.
Same damn person.
Correct.
Removed from like a couple years, right? So, when she became the brigade sergeant, I said, yeah, obviously, of course, But I think one of the first memories that I have of Emily is she's a plebe and she was struggling in swimming. And she just good at everything, brilliant, athletic, you name it. This girl could not conquer swimming. And so one of my classmates, black male in her company, comes to me and goes, hey, sis, Emily doesn't want people to know that she's struggling with this, but I need your help because everybody knew my story. Like I took plebe drowning back to back, like one full semester of it, failed both, and then had to go right into the second semester. I mean, they were hooking me every day out the pool. I mean, I just could not do it. And so I would meet my classmate and Emily at the pool no less than 3 to 4 nights a week. It was like 8, 9 o'clock at night. I could still smell the chlorine. And I would watch her, this person would come into the pool, get in the water, full of fear, and then almost instantly, the determination on her face. Instantly, I'm going to do it. And I watched her push and push and push. So some of my earliest memories is me on the side of the pool laying down, screaming at her like she can hear me in the water. You are not going to fail West Point over no damn pool. Just yelling at her, just trying to rile up that competitive nature in her. But I would just watch her switch, her face switch. Instantly, I'm like, this girl is a beast, right? So of course, when she passed, she's very grateful to those who helped her through that. But it's nah, man, this was just one of those hurdles that you had to overcome, and you just need a little extra push. And, I think the second, memory I have of her most best point is gospel choir. She was in the soprano section. I was in the alto section. It's this alto soprano competition thing. And we literally would be singing to each other from the other side of the gospel choir in competition. But she and I, our spirits meshed, so we made that environment so much fun. So it wasn't just an escape from the core or tapping into our spiritual principles and roots. It was making that a family. And, even after I graduated, I knew that Emily in leadership and still being connected to the gospel choir, it was going to always feel like family. I can remember, I'd go into Iraq and I'd come back. And by that time, the classes behind me were rotating in and out, right? So I was one of the first in my class to go. So now I'm worried because I know man, my little brothers and my little sisters are starting to rotate in. And I remember when I got the call, I asked probably 3 times to Emily who. Nah.
Where you get the call from?
Gosh, I want to say it was Bridget. And Bridget Bell, she called me. I know it was. Because she was the only one that I probably could hear it from and believe it. And I know I kept asking her. And I knew that she was getting ready to come home. So that's why I kept asking. Why, so now I need facts. Why was she even on the mission? Why? Why? And I made it a point to attend the funeral because I needed confirmation. I just could not. I needed to see her family. I needed to see the cat, all of that. I needed to see all the things because it just would not process that she was going. She was the best of us. She was supposed to be a general. How we talk about Nigel West, that's how we were supposed to talk about him. Period. I know people would say whatever they said about me, but I'm nah, that's it. She's it. And, even hugging her mother at the funeral didn't make it real. It wasn't real to me until we came back for the 40th anniversary of women graduating West Point a few years ago. And we dedicated, West Point Women dedicated a brick in her honor. And at the service prior to the dedication, Emily's mother asked me to sit beside her in church, at the front of the church. And Emily's mother just held my hand really tightly. And I was just like, and then that's when I broke. I think for years I've been in denial about it because it felt like God made a mistake. And I know God doesn't make any mistakes, but if like this one, like, I don't know about this one, right? And so I think for me, even now, part of me works really hard to make my community proud, my family proud. I think there's a solid part of me, though, that wants to make her proud and to inspire other Emily's, those spirit animals, right? Where I can be I can look up and go, that plebe is me. And then I'm sure Emily looked at another plebe and said, that plebe is me, and like that legacy. And so to see, I think what makes me so very proud, though, is to see how much the Academy continues to honor her. Like, plebes know who she is. I've had soldiers who served in her unit reach out to me. Every couple of years, they'll reach out to me and go, ma'am, I knew Emily. And I heard or read something, and I know you're a Black woman, West Pointer, did you know Emily? And then I would just share my story with them. And every one of their stories of her as a leader is exactly what we believe and know about her. And so that makes me very proud too. Like, you don't get any, yeah, she was this, but then she was just a jerk, or she didn't take care of soldiers. You don't get that. You get, she was a hell of an officer and a hell of a woman. So I just still processing it, but I hope I make her proud. I hope you make her proud. I hope our classmates. I hope all of us are doing her memory in good, some sort of good.
Indeed. And the reason why I bring that up, and I thank you for sharing. She was very near and dear to my heart, and so like this is one of the reasons why I'm on the path that I'm on. Mm-hmm. And so, just having everybody else to hear her story from a different standpoint helps to kind of paint the picture of the type of person she is and the impact that she has left on all of us. And the other part to it is, one of my first reasons for going to West Point, I was told that, when you go there, you will meet people and you will make friends for life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you sharing your story, the growth of, meeting each other, spirit animal, helping get through, some tough situations, plebe swimming, which, that gets a lot of folks.
Yes.
It does. And then going from these young college kids that are training to be in the military and to be leaders, to actually stepping into that role and doing it. And so, what you did for your soldiers and what she did for hers and for our country as well, with her sacrifice, I mean, it's just a true testament to what we raised our hand for when we were 7 and 18.
Yeah.
And for all of my combat orange brothers and sisters, man, to raise your hand and to take that vow and that oath to protect and defend the Constitution and our nation, I mean, that's an awesome and a great responsibility.
Yeah.
And I know for me, just like you, don't regret none of it.
Yeah.
Regardless of how painful it is.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's still an awesome sacrifice. And I'm able to hold my head up high, and I know you are, for what we endured and what we went through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I appreciate you, you sharing that. I do. I really do. Okay. Let's talk about coping.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding, you grew up in this type of dysfunction, have some normalcy with your stepfather coming in and kind of changing things around or changing the narrative so you can see what right looks like, in your household, to going to West Point, being in the military. Let's talk about tools and techniques that you use to cope with trauma and grief. Let's start with the unhealthy and then the healthy.
Yeah, that's why I started giggling when you said it. So I love bourbon. Like, I collect bourbon. I just, I learned to love bourbon just not too long ago. It comes from like being a nonprofit director, and you're a lot of smoozing and all this other stuff. So a lot of events, and you just kind of acquire a certain taste. And what's interesting is, even in the military and post-military, I did not turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism. Not at all. I mean, I would drink. I like alcohol, but it just wasn't a drinker, mostly because, staying in shape and all those good things. I just got pretty decent, healthy habits, eating habits. And it was after I got out of the military that, and especially coupled with now I have injuries and I have chronic pain, and now I'm finally like having to deal with PTSD, right? My post-traumatic stress, that I turned to two things, right? Because if I'm not mobile the way I usually am, my body hurts. Doctors are telling me, hey, listen, this is not going to get better. They're pumping me full of opioids or shots or surgery number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm up to surgery 14 at this point. I turned to two things. I turned to food and I turned to alcohol. And because in my mind, I'm going, you know what? I'm not out here in these streets doing, what I consider to be nefarious or criminal activity. I'm not causing anybody else any trouble. But I was essentially medicating myself, like finding ways to not constantly think about how bad I thought or think my life is, right? So if a doctor tells you, hey, Mary, you'll be lucky if you can walk unassisted by 40. And oh, by the way, you will always be in pain. Like I deal with chronic pain. I'm in pain every moment of the day. I'm just able to kind of manage it a little bit. Or as I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking about it. But when I focus on it, I'm like, this kind of sucks. And so I turn to food and alcohol, which led to significant weight gain. And then we know that alcohol is a depressant. Right. So when I'm all melancholy, listening to Coltrane all night, I'm like, what's wrong with me? Like writing sad poems and, watching, depressing movies and shows. Well, I'm literally feeding that mood and that mindset, but for me, because it wasn't as bad as fill in the blank, I was like, well, I'm not bothering anybody. Let me be. And then that also allowed me to be more isolationist. So my best friends would know when I'm going through something, when I would not respond to texts and phone calls. And, I get very short in my answers. Right. So that's the unhealthy ways that I coped and cope. So I still have to fight that now. Right. The healthy ways is when I tap into like the literal amazing therapist network, especially for Black women. And then when I get really specific and I request, I want a Black woman veteran, and I think I'm not going to get it. And then boom, I got a sister who has been to combat, is around my age, is spiritual and can really help me walk through my journey. That's when I find myself coping healthily. I also am a writer at heart. So when I begin to write, a lot of the things that I'm dealing with, I can get out on paper. I feel the weight release from me when I get it out. I also have some really, really good friends in my support circle that sometimes they'll know, they'll ask me how I'm doing. And I go, I'm hanging in there. No matter how are you really doing? And then they'll let me vent and I'll just release an hour. I'm just going. And then when I'm done, okay, I can make it. And then I think the last thing is, for me, music is life. So I really put a lot into developing playlists that are targeted towards fighting depression. for me. Because depression is a thing that I deal with. Anxiety is a thing that I deal with. And so, being able to hit the worship playlist, being able to hit, the ratchet trap playlist, being able to hit my classical music, my ATL playlist, my smooth jazz, my Coltrane, those things, like having that at the ready so that I can begin to fight that stuff is really, really helpful in how I cope.
Indeed. You said Coltrane twice, so you're not have to.
Like, listen. Between him and Miles Davis, I'm telling you, it like the music, the notes, like literally will play you out of a deep, dark place. I love it.
Indeed. And I was telling my son this as well. He's a rising senior, so we're trying to get him into West Point as well.
Yes.
And he likes to listen to what I call this crying music. Right? Right? You got these rappers, like crying on the mic about, their experiences and shit. And I'm like, man, like, and so I was like, don't you know the music you listen to affects your mood and how you respond to things. So I was like, you have to be mindful of what you're listening to, because if you give in to the depression and feed it, it's just going to grow. That's it. So,
literally physically feed it, mentally feed it, spiritually feed it. Like, so to your point, I've learned to fight. My first weapon to fight is music. I'm like, Mary, you got to change this whole atmosphere. Open up some blinds. I can detect how depressed I am too by how messy or cluttered my space is too, because I'm not a messy person. So if I see clutter, I'm like, oh, Mary, get it together, because you know what's coming, right? So, yeah.
Indeed. I like that. Okay, so tell us, from your experience, personally and also, dealing with your soldiers, what were some signs that y'all were dealing with grief and trauma, feelings, thoughts, actions that were, visible?
Yeah. I would first notice behavioral changes, right? So especially in war, right? You kind of get into a routine, okay, Mary goes to the gym at 4:30 in the morning. She goes to breakfast. She goes to the DFAC by 6:30, 6:45, and then she's in the office 7:30. She's working till 7:38. Routines. Your routine. And the first thing I notice is when routines change. And it don't change just because you got tired one day or because you're dealing with an emergency back home or a mission change. Like, you start to notice, like, okay, your soldiers, they literally aren't doing the things anymore that brought them joy. They're not working out anymore. They're not calling home. Work has fallen off. Even their responses to you, they no lack of eye contact, not laughing as much anymore. And if you're not careful, you can just kind of brush that off. But, after a week or two, you're like, okay, what's going on with Smith? What's going on with Jackson, right? Like, what's happening there? I'll also say, too, you learn a lot about people, especially in war and military units. You get really close with them. So you learn about their family, their friends, their hobbies, their likes, right? So what's that group? Evanescence, I think. We listened to like those songs like forever in my first deployment. And this one particular soldier, he always played it, right? And sometimes it was a little bit depressing, but we was like, okay, we started to like it after a while. When he stopped playing that music, or when you start asking him about his hobby, how you doing on this? And I haven't done that. I don't care about that no more. Okay. Some more red flags, and then, I think angry outbursts, like when you, like, just for no reason, is another sign, or just being completely withdrawn, right, where you don't want to have anything to do with the soldiers or unit or anything like that anymore outside of work. I think that those are clear signs. I think sometimes we'll just kind of brush it off as, he's going through some stuff. Let's let him, he'll work it out. She'll work it out. But the reality of it is fighting in a war is not normal. And so the trauma and the grief and the loss associated with combat, that's not normal things that happen to, the rest of society. So we can't brush that off as if it's a normal thing, because it's not. So how we address it or help each other cope through it has to be different. It has to be. I'm saying that in hindsight now, right? Where I can look back and go, oh, you'll be all right, pat you on the back. Wait, no, we're at war. People have lost their lives, like stuff is happening. Maybe we should lean into that and figure out or try to help each other through that. But, at the time we weren't taught that. The Army was still trying to catch up with terms like traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, right?
Indeed. Okay. No, I appreciate you kind of identifying some of the signs. So behavior changes, in work, in communication, and interacting with people, angry outbursts, feelings of not caring, things like that, or some very clear indicators to that you're dealing with something.
Yeah.
When you are around a person routinely and you see that they start to change a bit, take the time to pay a little more attention to them. And I'm not speaking to you. I'm talking to everybody else that's out there.
Good. Yeah, that's good.
Because, you don't know what a person is going through outside of what they're showing you. And so, being able to just genuinely take the time to say, hey, look, you're good, might make a difference.
Literally, it has been a difference. It's been a difference for me. And I think with some of my soldiers, me doing that for them has been a difference for them as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about support. So when you were going through your trauma and grief, what did you do to help yourself?
Initially nothing. I think I folded more into the church, my spiritual resources, growing up in the church, or at least a portion of my life in the church, you're taught that's where you get your strength from. That's where you get your hope from and all that. So I think I lean into the church a little bit more. But the church has historically not done a good job of connecting with mental health resources. There's some things that you just can't pray away. You need to pray and get therapy. Pray and get therapy and take medication to go to sleep. There's some combo coping mechanisms that I think need to happen in combination with reconnecting to your spiritual base. So initially it was church. I really, really fought the idea of going to therapy. I often tell the story and I laugh about it. The first time I went to a behavioral health, counselor, I was dressed literally like Inspector Gadget. I'm talking about the tan trench coat. I had the hat on and sunglasses, as if nobody was going to notice, the only Black female lieutenant on the daggone post going to the mental health clinic, with the recognizable hood car that I had at the time, that they didn't know it was me. And I think, the first time I go in, I spend 10 minutes with the guy, and the first thing he wants to do is give me Prozac. You don't even know what's really wrong with me. Right. Just writing me a script. I never filled the script. And to this day, I don't know if I really need it or not, but I know that I would spend literally the next 4 to 5 years of my life, avoiding therapy, being very angry, becoming more and more withdrawn, and so I just, I did not really build a good support system around me while I was still in the military. It wasn't until I was in a wounded warrior battalion and I was realizing that I was going to lose my career, that I was being medically retired, where I kind of had this time and space to sit and think about, okay, what am I going to do next? Who am I going to be? What will my life be? I'm disabled. I'm injured. I'm broken, right? What does that look like? And, coming to my ropes in, where people are telling me, Mary, you have so much to live for and your future is great, and me not feeling like it, I needed to reckon with that. And then that's when I really started to take my journey into therapy. But the first 2 therapists I had, I prayed for them every day because I gave them hell. I was horrible to them. Just horrible. I had so much anger and sadness and resentment, that I would dedicate, this much, my life in service to the country. And then I felt discarded And I didn't know what else to do. I thought I was going to spend 30 years in the military. And when I didn't, and no one was helping me figure it out, I felt very alone. Even if I wasn't physically alone, I felt very alone. And so, now that I preach so much about therapy now, but God bless those therapists and their families wherever they may be. So if you're watching this, I am so very sorry for how I treated you. You did good work. You broke up the hard ground so that I could become the person that I am today.
Indeed. Okay. So let's look at it from the outside looking in. So from your friends and family and the people around you, what kind of support would you want at dealing with trauma and grief?
Yeah, I think especially for my family and friends that weren't military, it's very hard to understand exactly, what service members go through, especially, if they have been in combat. Because a lot of times, I know I hid my experiences from my mother. I hid my experiences from my siblings and my family members because I didn't want them to be scared or, whatever the case may be, or traumatized just from some of the things that I've shared with them. Like, I've shared things with you because you're a fellow veteran, but I don't just speak about some of the things that I've seen and experienced because I'm just like, well, even when I'm saying it, I'm like, that is totally not a normal thing to be a part of or to see or to experience. And here I am just talking about death and whatever, like in a calm voice. So it's part of me that I don't feel like I'm regular or normal in how I'm even expressing what I've been through. So you hold back a lot of that, right? You don't say. So if you're looking at family and friends who are not military and you can see that your family member may be going through something, the first thing I would say is create space, non-judgmental, calm, just warm, good space for them to just be, right? There's a level of trust and safety that a veteran must build, even with family members and friends, in order to begin to open up about those things. And we spend so many years hearing our family and friends worry about us that we mentally think, I have to be strong. They can't handle what I have to tell them. So I'm not going to tell them. And we are trying to protect them and they're trying to help save us, right? So create that space for them, right, where they can just be themselves. And one night you're going to wind up, you're going to find yourself, right, sharing a glass of your favorite wine, bourbon, or non-alcoholic beverage. And your veteran is going to say, this reminds me of this one time when X and Y, Z happened. And then I would encourage you as a family member or friend to just listen, to ask thoughtful questions that are open-ended. Wow, that's a lot. How are you feeling now? How are you dealing with it now? That's rough. Is there anything that I can do to help you with that? If they say no, got it. Just know that I'm always here. Or if they say yes, well, let's talk about that. I don't know how to do that, but can you help me be what you need me to be for you? And that continues building that space of trust and openness, because veterans don't need you to save us or to give us all the answers. We just need to know that we're not alone. That's
Indeed. I like how you put that, and there's no explanation that needs to come after that. Right. We just need to know we're not alone. I mean, we're problem solvers and our work ethic is like through the roof. So we're willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
And for, them veterans out there, I know you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
And just know that you're not alone, in what you're going through. And so there's no need to give up. Because if you keep plowing away, like it's going to be sunshine at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, 100%.
Indeed. Okay, so tell us, what's been the toughest part of your journey?
The toughest part of my journey has been finding purpose outside of the military. I think it's very clear that, when you're in the military, good or bad unit, good or bad leader, like you have a mission, right? You have mission, you have supplies, you have resources, you are trained, you know how to prep. You're very clear about what success looks like, period. Even from an individual standpoint, I know if I'm 8 up, I know if I'm best in class, right? outside of the military, it is not as clear cut. It is not as structured. And so, you know, you come to find yourself comparing yourself with a lot of people and a lot of different standards and a lot of journeys. Like, you know, I'm 40 years old, and I think that I've led a heck of a career and a heck of a life. But if I'm not careful, I look to my left and my right at some of my peers and some people that I admire, and I go, man, I haven't done anything. Like, man, what have you been doing? Or that one mistake you made 4 or 5 years ago set you back 20 years. You'll never be that thing. And so it's literally like the danger of comparison for me that continues to like chip away at my self-esteem or my confidence, right? So even as confident as people think I am, like I'm always going like, ugh, did I do enough? Can I do more? Have I done enough? Is this the right path that I'm even on? Like, Mary, you are like toiling away as a nonprofit leader. You know, nonprofit leaders don't, we're not rich. We don't do this work because we want to get rich. Mary, could you have a bigger impact if you were working in the private sector and doing something else? Like what? It's always those doubts and fears and questions. I mean, the military is very clear. If I want to be a 4-star general, these are the things I need to do. You know, and on the outside, not that clear. And, you know, having a sense of pride and knowing that you're doing the right thing, it's not so easy to judge, right? The moral compass gets a little tilted every now and again on the outside. Mm-hmm. So, trying to find confidence in myself and knowing that what I'm doing is what's right for me has been a consistent challenge, I believe, for me.
Indeed. So finding confidence in self is a consistent challenge, and finding purpose outside of the military. Yeah, I would definitely agree with those. So what I found is that all of us struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to what the military brings to the table. I am Sergeant such and such, or I am Officer such and such, and this is my job. And the military has given me task, condition, and standards on how to do this. And so we take in and embody that aspect of this is who I am. When honestly, I'm Greg Washington. I'm not 11 Alpha. You know what I mean? Like I'm me and you're you. And so being able to stay connected to who you are and have a tribe and have a sense of purpose outside of the military, that you are more than just your uniform.
Yeah.
And your MOS is key,
right?
You know, to your sanity. And so, you know, when you speak about all the things that you've gone through and then finding that confidence, you know, for me, part of it has been, well, how do I define myself? Who am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and
I often tell my mentees to follow the breadcrumbs. And that's what I teach myself. Like, there was this Christian rapper by the name of The Truth, and he has this song where he talks about finding your purpose. And he often says the very things that frustrate you most in life, the things that make you smile the most in life, the things that bring you the greatest joy or even break your heart, those are breadcrumbs or little symbols that align with who you are and who you're created to be, right? And if we pay attention to those things, we'll find that those breadcrumbs were there even before we left the military. And then those breadcrumbs are still there after you leave the military. And so you really you hone in on that, you'll start to see a pattern. You know, like I saw very early on, like for me, like I really care about fighting for people who are underestimated or people who are oppressed, or, you know, my favorite movies in the world are either the underdogs, those who turn it around, right? Where like they, you know, you start low and then like they end up, you know, a high note, but they also end up helping all the people along the way who believed in them. Or not bad revenge stories, but the revenge stories where like someone did you wrong and you worked really hard to get revenge, and then you found out like that wasn't the way, and then you showed everybody like a new paradigm. And then it started to make sense, right? Like, why is Mary always like fighting for justice or speaking up for people? Well, I have loved those movies and those stories since I was 7 years old. Those are the Cinderellas of the world. Right. I love Cinderella. Cinderella is my favorite Disney movie in the whole wide world. I don't care what else comes out. Cinderella is it for me. And I can see the breadcrumbs. And so, you were saying earlier, like knowing that you are more than just your MOS or rank, you've always been more than just your MOS or rank. You just chose to channel your gifts and your talents into the military. But you don't lose who you are once you leave. It is the challenge is getting in touch with that and figuring out how to take everything you've learned and all the skills and experience and the leadership you've gained from the military, now using that to realize your greatness now, right? And constantly doing that. And not being afraid to pivot too, because you might find yourself along this path. I don't really feel, but I've committed. No, pivot. We have to reserve the right to pivot until we align with our purpose, right? And I think that's what drives me. It's like, Mary, if this don't feel right, this is not, Cedric the Entertainer said, if this something don't quite curl, like if it doesn't quite curl, then Mary, keep going. Because there's a true you, right? There's a true Mary. And, I won't rest until I find that. And I think we all have those breadcrumbs in our life if we start to pay attention.
Yeah, I like how you said that. There's a true you, just like there's a true north. Yeah, right? So there's a true you. You just got to be willing to stay the course and find it. I like that. Okay, so let's talk about making amends. So for a person going through trauma and grief and finding their way, it's oftentimes that hurt people.
Yes.
And so for the people you hurt, if any, how did you make amends?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I mean, I feel like I'm good with words outside of apologies. Not that, I have a broken and contrite spirit, which means that like, I know I can feel when I hurt other people. So I know when an apology is needed or deserved. One of the first things that I did to work up to actually being able to verbalize it is that I would write letters. I mean, I know we are in texting now, but I would literally handwrite it. And that's still something that I do because handwriting something shows the effort, the time, the attention. It shows that you thought about it, right? Because you write something, you'll make a mistake, you have to scratch stuff out. So if you're sending somebody something and there's very few mistakes, that person probably went through 3 or 4 iterations. And so they really worked hard to say that they're sorry or to try and make amends. So I would say, one, write it out. You don't necessarily have to send that letter, but once you write it out, you can kind of see on paper the hurt that you've caused and the pain that you caused. And I think that creates this really healing transition in you, because now when you speak to them, they hear and feel the authenticity. Folks know when you're faking, and so it's really important for folks to hear your apology in the tone of your voice, in the facial expressions, so it's not just a crying, it is like the strength of conviction in your words, right? So I would say write it down. And then if there's an opportunity to have a face-to-face or even a virtual conversation, like look someone in the eye and say, listen, I'm sorry. Like, even if I didn't mean to hurt you, even if there's a reason why you didn't deserve that. I could have said it a different way. I could have went about it a different way. Even if I was hurt, you didn't deserve that. So thank you for not giving me back the hurt that I gave you, right? And then asking, what can I do to restore our friendship or our relationship? And if they go, I don't know, give them the space to even process the apology. Because a person has the right to not accept your apology and to move on from that relationship. And that's something that you have to mourn. But I think even approaching it from a standpoint where you give that person space to receive or reject, to help restore or to move on is a sign of growth in you as a person, because amends and apologies and forgiveness, it's not for them. It's actually for you, so that you're not the same person, that you used to be.
Indeed. Indeed. What kept you going when you wanted to give up?
First, my goddaughter. I had the honor of raising her from 5 to 13. And I can distinctly remember a moment, when I was on the cusp of being, I call it kicked out of the military, but medically retired, and pain wasn't ending. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And it just seemed like everybody in this world was probably better off without me. And I can remember actually, this is the first time I've ever told this story out loud. I can remember actually writing my farewell letter to give to my best friend, Bridget, with instructions on who was to get what I thought about things. And I remember going to bed that night with fully with the intentions of waking up the next morning and, taking all the pills I had. Remember I told you I had a whole bunch of opioids that I just didn't like to take. But I'm like, well, do it now. And my baby, who was 7 years old at the time, never slept in the bed with me because she just, was a kicker. The kids that sleep in the bed, they just kick you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
She was awful. She knew you cannot sleep in the bed with me. So I don't care how scared of the dark you are, you better get that nightlight. And that particular night at like 2 a.m. in the morning, she comes in my bedroom, climbs in my bed, and wraps her little tiny arms around my neck and just falls asleep. Doesn't kick me all night. Just, it's like she knew that I needed her. And when she went back to sleep, I remember just weeping the rest of the night. And, maybe one day when she watches this or she hear me tell the story again, she'll know that she saved my life. But she absolutely saved my life. That was I was very sure that I didn't want to live anymore. And so, God does send little angels, and sometimes he sends them in the form of our kids and our God babies and all the children that we just don't deserve. Gosh, we don't deserve them. But thank God for them.
Indeed. So thank God for your little angel.
Absolutely.
And once again, I appreciate you, you sharing that. You were giving me so many things to put in my toolkit, with this conversation. So, it's just been a blessing to me, and hopefully to, whoever's out there that, listens to this, because we're pouring our souls, so that we can help somebody else. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I just want to say thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this. This may be a labor of love for you, but this takes courage. Men don't do this. Men don't bare their souls. They're not traditionally vulnerable, and having these discussions aren't easy. And so thank you for creating this platform. I am healing today through this conversation with you. So gratitude to you, my brother.
Indeed. Me too. Likewise. Okay. So when we talked about the unhealthy coping mechanisms, right, that we learned and used, what caused you to correct some of your destructive behaviors?
Part of it is I had responsibility. I said I was raising my goddaughter for a good time. And, you start to think, is this the example I want to set for my kid? So, when your kid starts noticing that you're drinking adult juice a lot more than regular, so your kid says, are you drinking adult juice again? That's kind of his, maybe, and then, it's like now you're trying to sneak it up to your bedroom. You're like, okay, wait, now let me get my life together, right? So you start noticing, your own personal habits, skew to the left or the right. I would also say over in 2012, I donated one of my kidneys to my mother. And, you know, I'm so blessed and honored that I was able to do that. She gave me life. I got to return the favor. But, you know, giving a kidney means that I'm living without a kidney. And so I have to be very cognizant of my health. And, you know, that's why I'm pretty open about, you know, even my struggles with like getting back into physical shape and all these other things. I mean, I just had my hip replaced, another, you know, remnant of my time in the military. But I have to be, you know, more intentional about my health because of my injuries, because of my struggles with PTSD, and because I know that I am prone to, you know, anxiety and depression, like bouts of depression, right? And I know that I do struggle with, you know, processing grief and loss, you know, from even years ago. So, like, even if I'm not successful most of the time, like I'm thinking and I'm being intentional, right? So that's more than before when I was just ignored and just do my thing, right? Talking about being in combat. Why plan for the future? Well, now I see that there is a future. It may be modified, right? So I don't like that I have to sometimes use a cane. I don't like that, you know, sometimes I have to use the wheelchair in the airports. You know, I don't like that there's 3 times a year where I know my sleep is going to be off because it coincides with, you know, surges in Fallujah, right? I don't like that, but I've been able to craft a life around that and through that, and it's a pretty good life, you know? And so if I want to protect those good moments, then I make myself think about ways more often than not to put healthy coping mechanisms in place. So even if I do slip and I'm like, you know, I drink a little bit too much, or I may eat the wrong things too many days in a row, I did wake up listening to worship music or meditating or spending some time writing in my journal, and I'll celebrate that. So celebrating when I do the right thing has been really helpful to me, because I used to only think of the bad. You know, Mary, you did this bad, you did that bad, you know, and that's what I'm focusing on. But no, Mary, you know, you did this right. And 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you weren't doing that. And so just being very intentional about speaking life and celebrating myself, right, that's what I do to cope and be a better person now. It's like, Mary, what are you doing to celebrate when you do get it right?
Indeed. I like that. I really do. I like that. So, you know, with the earlier question, right, of changing your destructive behaviors, do you feel like a person has to be upon their darkest hour or hit rock bottom in order to make a change?
Certainly helps. You know, I don't think they have to be. I know I hit rock bottom because every time I knew things were getting more and more worse, I didn't reach out. I literally rejected any notion of support or help. Like, something bad happened, that sucks. Something else will happen, bad. Oof, that really sucks. Man, my life kind of sucks right now. And in no moment am I going, support system. I'm not plugging in at all. So it's knowing that when you do take a hit, right? That is your sign. That's your signal to plug in, like immediately, plug in early and often. But we tell ourselves this story, especially in America, that like this success story that you gotta hit rock. No, you don't have to hit rock. You shouldn't hit rock. There's nothing fun at rock bottom, right? But I think even more so though, there are systems and resources and people who want to help you not hit rock bottom. There are strangers who helped me in my darkest hours. People whose names I'll never know, whose kindness I can never repay, you know, but just knew that I needed help and support and just did it anyway, you know. So I would say, you know, when you about to hit rock bottom, I think we all do. I'll say that I did, you know, especially when you deal with bouts of depression, you know, yeah, here it comes. Yeah, one more day, you know. And so when I know I'm getting there, I'll reach out, I'll say something, I'll do something different, I'll shake but it's because I've become mature enough now, I think mature enough in my, I would say, and how I handle my pride, right? To say, okay, Mary, you can't deal with this on your own. It is not just like the hardcore stuff like financial troubles or you lose your job or something like that. It's like when I can't even handle this, like the littlest thing, the littlest challenge sets me off. My anxiety's through the roof. It's like, oh, okay, Mary, like this is not normal for you to just lose it. So reach out to your friend and like just help so she can help you process that. So like using those red flags, like the little warning signals in your car, like when that thing goes off, you can ignore it for a while, but then your car breaks down. I would say the minute that signal goes off, get yourself checked, get your car checked, right? Like have somebody be like, am I tripping? Like, and then somebody can say, yeah, girl, you tripping. But let's figure out how to work through that.
Indeed. That's right. Look, like you said, when that engine light check on, go get it checked out.
Yeah,
you got to. I like that. Okay. So you've already started to answer this next question, right? Because it's around getting help. And so, does the race, gender, and background of your counselor or mental health professional make a difference in how effective the treatment is?
My immediate response was initially yes. I think because of the importance of having a connection with someone who's going to get all in your business, and I think especially for, I'll go out on a limb and say, especially for those of us from marginalized communities, race, ethnicity, orientation, ability, all those things. It's important to be able to establish that connection with your therapist. I initially was just like, okay, they got to be a veteran. No, first it was got to be a woman. That didn't work out because I had women therapists asking me, why would I join the military? That it's not for women. It's too tough, rough. I'm like, oh, okay. Then it was like, okay, you got to be a veteran. And then, there was some incongruence with experiences there, right? Where it's like, did you really go through all of that you're saying you went through? Or, it was like, but that veteran was a male. And so then I got to the point where I said, you know what? I want somebody Black, I want somebody a woman, and I want somebody a veteran, but not just a veteran, but they were in combat. I got real specific. And that's something that I don't let up off of because I feel like those 3 connection points for me caused the most disconnection when I was trying to trust the therapist. So I feel like you got to figure out what's most important for you in building trust enough to share your very personal experiences with someone. For another veteran, it might not be veteran or combat or gender or race. It might be hometown. You come from where I come from, so you know what I went through. And that's what's more important than anything else, right? But I know for me, that was trial and error. And so now for me, I don't go to a therapist that doesn't have those 3 connection points because much of my trauma is rooted in my military experiences. So why would I then put myself in an environment where this person's not going to connect to me on any level? Or I have to explain everything. So I just, I would just encourage people to figure out what are those trust factors that matter the most to them, and then demand that is the type of therapist you get. Do not accept some random that does not connect with you. Feel free, change at a moment's notice. Do not allow disrespect or invalidation of your experiences or your background or who you are. Go check, please. I need somebody else. You do not owe any therapist your time or your money, period. So this is your experience, your growth. Like fight for that growth and that healing.
Indeed. So what advice would you give your younger self?
I would say this to my younger self. Girl, you're going to be a boss. So act like a boss early and often. And you will always have doubters. You'll always have haters. You'll always have people who think they know what's best for you, but always follow your heart. That's what I would say to my younger self.
I hear that. And the key part of what you're saying is follow your heart.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be a boss. You know, you're going to be great. Right. And so this goes back to, I went to West Point versus going to Spelman.
Yeah.
You knew you was going to be great.
Yeah.
And so in knowing that regardless of whatever your path is,
right,
act like a boss.
That's right.
Right. And follow your heart. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, looking back on everything, do you see your growth?
100%. Gosh, I have so much peace and joy that literally those two things are unaffected by life circumstances today in a way that was not even possible just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, just being swayed to and fro by challenges and like my whole mood and emotions and my outlook on life just being just thwarted, just destroyed. My life is over because this thing happened to me. Now the way I approach the challenges is one step at a time, understanding who I truly am, what I'm still capable of, and how to navigate those challenges has been, I think it's been a symbol to me that I have grown, right? That I can smile in the midst of a pandemic, when certain uncertainties, exist for me. And I think that's the indication of my growth, and that I'm very aware that my anxiety and my depression, my issues with depression, can be very apparent, especially when I'm dealing with challenges. So the fact that I'm even aware of it and I'm setting myself up for success beforehand lets me know that I've grown instead of just letting life happen to me. I'm being very intentional and proactive. And I'll say that I'm very proud of the Mary that I am today. Very proud. And not because of what I accomplished, but because of my mindset and my heart.
Indeed. Well, look, I appreciate you sharing and, just giving us, look, I got 2.5 pages of notes that I put in my toolkit. So, what I'm saying? Like, I definitely appreciate, you just coming on and talking with me today. It means a tremendous amount to me. And I know to someone else that's going to be out there listening to it. I am going to give you the floor to talk about any efforts that you're doing, how people can reach out to you, how they can look up, like what you're doing. So I know Do More Together is one big thing out there that you're pushing. So, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. I'm the proud co-founder of Do More Together, which is the African American Alumni Association or organization for West Point. We are an official 501c3 and an official alumni organization for West Point. And we work through 4 pillars: networking, recruiting, mentorship, and fundraising to directly support Black/African American cadets at the Academy and Black graduates. What makes this network so amazing is that it is not just Black people. It is everyone who wants to ensure that cadets, as they go through West Point, they are in a safe, healthy, developmental, and amazing learning environment as they become officers. And then when you graduate, you have access and exposure to opportunities that will make you a great officer as well as a great professional in whatever career you choose. And so we do mentoring. We're getting ready to host this amazing virtual summit in October, and we look forward to having about 1,000 people attend that. We're actively building pipelines to create more representative staff and faculty at the Academy. And so hopefully we can share this model even with other predominantly white institutions who want to increase their diversity. And so we're doing, I think, some fantastic things every day with Do More Together. And we have monthly town halls. And so if any of you would like to know how to join the town halls, to join any of the groups and committees and initiatives that we're running, you can go to www.domoretogether.org. And that's a 2, the number 2. So www.domoretogether.org. I also say that I have recently soft launch my own consultancy. So just Mary L. Tobin Consulting. And I focus on a few areas: strategic planning and organization, leadership development, and my heart, my passion, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I run everything from leadership consulting with your executives, from hosting facilitation with small groups, and then I've also facilitated large conferences. So I'm available as well. And you can email me at Mary Tobin, 8 at gmail.com to find out more. My website will be going live next week at maryltobin.com. So got a lot of exciting things here on the horizon. And I hope that any of your viewers and your listeners have need of any of those resources, that they just hop on in and connect with me.
Indeed. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Mary Tobin. But look, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Like, you mean the world to me. So, I mean, I really appreciate, you coming on. Are there any words of wisdom or encouragement you want to say to anybody before we sign out?
Absolutely. I live my life by this quote from Muhammad Ali that says the service that we do for others is the rent that we pay for our room here on earth. I think that for all the greatness and gifts and talents inside of each of us, there is a gift or a talent that we are to lead to others. So I want to encourage everybody to figure that out. What is that one thing that this world can only get from you, that we need from you? That is your legacy. Figure that out, and do not die with that inside of you. Die empty. We need it. We cannot do this thing called life without you. You're the only reason and the only way that humanity really works. So find that thing, leave that thing, and make the world a better place.
Indeed. Indeed. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Look, for all y'all out there, this is Guards Down with Mary Tobin and Greg, telling y'all to stay safe, stay focused, and stay engaged. We're out.
You've been listening to Guards Down with Greg Washington. PTSD and complicated grief are very real. About 8 out of every 100 people will have PTSD at some point in their lives. About 20 to 54% of people with complicated grief will simultaneously suffer from major depressive disorder. And that's why shows like this are hugely important. Raising awareness for PTSD and complicated grief. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hook up with us at guardsdown.com. We are iron.org, on Facebook at Guards Down, and find us on YouTube and Instagram.